Hi, and welcome back. In this lecture, we take up the two remaining elements of a valid contract, capacity and legality. Remember, as we've discussed, a valid contract requires offer, acceptance, and consideration. But we know that sometimes an otherwise valid contract may not be enforced. The parties to a contract have to be competent to enter into the contract. And furthermore, the subject matter of the contract must be legal. So therefore, if we have a contract that is otherwise valid, offer, acceptance, and consideration being present, it still may not be enforceable if the parties to the contract, one or more of the parties, was incompetent and the subject matter of the contract was not legal. And so in this lecture, we're going to look at these requirements of capacity and legality. Beginning with capacity. Capacity is a legal doctrine that is used by courts to protect the parties who may lack the ability to understand the terms of an agreement. People like minors or mental incompetence or intoxicated persons. Any of these individuals may lack the full legal capacity to make legally binding contracts. Now, when a party who lacks capacity enters into a contract, that contract is likely to be voidable. A voidable contract is one that can be rejected or canceled by the person who lacked capacity at the time of entering into the contract. And a contract is voidable only by the person lacking full capacity and not the other party. Make sure you look at that for your exam. Let's start by looking at minors. Minors are persons that are younger than 18 years old. And generally, contracts entered into by minors are voidable at the minor's option. The minor has the right to either enforce the contract or to walk away from the contract, to avoid the contract. And they do so through these two methods called ratification and disaffirmists. Now, minors can ratify a contract once they reach 18 years of age. And ratification can be any act that that indicates that the minor intends to be bound by their promise. So any act once they have reached the age of majority in regard to that makes it appear that they intend to be bound by the promise will ratify the agreement, which now makes the agreement valid and enforceable by both sides. On the other hand, the minor can choose to disaffirm the contract. And disaffirmance results in what we call a rescission of the contract. Rescission means the parties are put back into their pre-contractual positions. Mental incompetency. Mental incompetence have a limited capacity to contract. Now, what are we talking about here? We're talking about individuals that have certain mental disorders or dementia or have some temporary impairment. So this includes those individuals who are temporarily incompetent, such as individuals who are severely depressed or who are under severe or traumatic pressure. These parties may lack the capacity to enter into a contract. Intoxicated persons, intoxication through drugs or alcohol, can also affect capacity. Now, how do we decide whether someone was drunk enough that their promise has no legal meaning? Well, we view that through an objective standard. Was the person so intoxicated that they did not understand what they were doing? Was that person so intoxicated that they could not act as a reasonable person would act under those circumstances? If intoxication prevented understanding, then the contract may be voidable. Voidable on the part of the formerly intoxicated person. Let's turn to legality. For a contract to be enforceable, it has to meet the standard of legality. If a contract violates a statute, then it's going to be unlawful and void, meaning neither party can enforce the contract. Courts will not enforce a contract that violates a statute. So if I ask you to burn my neighbor's house down, if I contract with you and agree to pay you $3,000 for burning down the house of my neighbor, that contract is void. It's unenforceable. Now, somewhat related is the idea of public policy. And public policy, when we talk about public policy, we're talking about the community's sense of conscience. Things about morals and health and safety and welfare. And if a contract violates public policy, if it produces something that is not in favor of what the public as a whole would want, then courts have the power to declare that contract void on the ground that it's contrary to public policy. Now, what are some examples of contracts that are void as contrary to public policy? First of all, any agreement that unreasonably restrains trade or business. So, monopolistic agreements, where we enter into an agreement where we agree not to sell our products to certain individuals or not to sell our products below a certain price. That's an agreement that restrains trade, and that's unlawful. Agreements for the sale of or the traffic in a public office, and agreements to procure government contracts by personal or political influence or corporate means, meaning like bribery. Now, the case in your book is called Dorado Beach Hotel Corporation versus Jernigan. In this case, Walter Jernigan, who was a Florida resident, lost a great deal of money at the Dorado Beach Hotel's casino in Puerto Rico. Now, in Puerto Rico, casino gambling is legal. Now, to pay for his losses, Jernigan wrote a check to the hotel. But when he returned to Florida, he stopped payment on the check. Now, in Florida, casino gambling is illegal. Nevertheless, the hotel sued Jernigan in a Florida state court. And the question was, can a gambling debt, which is valid where it was created, can it be enforced in Florida? And the court answered no. The court said that it would not extend its ability to aid in the collection of a casino gambling debt, as that would be contrary to public policy in Florida. So what do we do with an illegal contract, a contract where the subject matter is illegal? Well, the general rule is that courts will not enforce illegal bargains. The court will leave the parties where it finds them. If the contract has not been executed yet, then neither party can enforce it. If it has been executed, then the court may enforce any lawful part if that part could be separated from the illegal part. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule, very few limited exceptions, which you can read about further in your book. So, in conclusion, what did we learn in this lecture? Valid contracts require capacity and legality. Capacity is a legal doctrine used by courts to protect parties who may lack the ability to understand the terms of an agreement. And contracts must have a lawful object. That's it for this one. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.